Nation, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Really means a lot to me. Today, I want to talk a little bit about contracts and budgets and like remove some of the mystery around it. So, we've most sites, when they start getting busy, they start getting more and more contracts and budgets. And really quick shout out to my business partner, Chris Sauber, who negotiates all of our contracts because Yuma Clinical Trials is a DSCS site in the DSCS site network. And Chris oversees all the contract and budget negotiations. So I have Chris on as a regular guest, and we've discussed these kind of things before, but I want to kind of break it down for you and show you the complexity of contracts and budgets because every study is unique. Every study has complexities and intricacies that only that study that are unique to that study, but the site in general has something of what's called overhead, which is admin, which is rent, which is payroll, workers' comp, which are things like branding, marketing, community outreach. When we go out and do branding, it's not just for a study, it's for all of our studies. Then we have other things that go into overhead, like you're supposed to have at least quality control mechanisms, QA systems in place, making sure that we are following our SOPs. These are things that when the FDA comes to audit, you better have quality management system. Yeah, a lot of these things we can pass off on to the sponsors in the contract and budget. For example, when you break down like quality assurance, well, do you have a e-source? Okay, how much is that? That could be part of the e-source fee. You could have an overall technology fee, which we've started putting into some of our budgets. So you can get little pieces of things here and there. You can definitely get a recruitment invoiceable added to your budget when it comes to advertising. Like we use Patient Ace, which is one of my other companies for Instagram and Facebook ads, and we can pass those invoices off to the sponsors, but we can also pay our monthly fee to Patient Ace, right? Just for a bundle of studies. And then we got to break it down based on the ads and which one's IRB approved and which one goes to which sponsor. So at what point does it become overhead versus an invoiceable? And it gets complicated because I would use Patient Ace even if I lost one of my studies. I would use Patient Ace even if I lost two of my studies. I don't think I would use Patient Ace if I lost all my studies. There would be no need. I don't have studies. But the point is, I'm using the tool regardless of any one particular trial. It's a technology that my site chooses to pay for, with or without study XYZ. And so there's a lot of economic considerations in place when you break down what's overhead versus what's a line item for a particular study versus invoiceable pass-through costs like X-rays, MRIs, local labs. Not every study is going to want or need those things, but for the ones that do, you better make sure that you have that in your invoiceable costs for that sponsor. Another element is dry ice. Sometimes that's just part of overhead. Other times it's a specific line item that you've got to invoice for. Other times you have things like meals for patients or transportation for patients. Like a lot of the times, those are invoiceable fees. And the meals, because the patients already receive a stipend, you're not gonna get necessarily meal reimbursement for your patients because the sponsor may ask you, well, why are they getting a study participant fee? But then you just want to be a nice company and have a pleasant and offer snacks for your patients. So that then becomes part of overhead. So these are a lot of moving parts. Having that 24-hour line for patients to call nonstop, like there's a real human being answering that phone. That's part of overhead. So overhead is a lot of the catch-all bucket But then every study also has line items for certain procedures, and each of those procedures have their own range of fair market value. And you have to know what that fair market value is because believe me, the sponsors and CROs know that stuff, and they probably have a database, especially the CROs have a database for that stuff. And the CROs also have access to this information more so than the sponsors because they're the middlemen between sponsors and sites a lot more than sponsors have access to the data. So as a site, you've got a lot of headwinds working against you. And according to Chris, my business partner, like, and I've been a witness to this, we've caught CROs lying to try to save a buck based on fair market value. We with the same sponsor now, luckily for us, again, this is economies of scale and the benefit of working with, we won't let them play those games. But if you're a smaller site and you're independent and you're not using a service like DSCS, you're just gonna have to learn this stuff the hard way, and that's where the human element comes in, to where there's no real way to automate the contract and budget aspect yet. There's ways to automate certain aspects of it, but to automate the fine nuances and the specific negotiations that go into a budget or a contract, you need highly specialized knowledge, like someone like Chris Sauber, someone like Darshan Kulkarni, and then you have to understand what you're actually going to be paying for before doing a study. So again, there's certain costs of doing business, CRC training, but then you get a CRC training fee if you know how to negotiate it in every budget for most studies. Again, if you ask for it. But that should also be part of your ongoing program as a site. Like you have employees, you're expected to train those employees whether a sponsor is paying for it or not. So if you don't have a study and you have a CRC, do you mean to tell me you're not training him or her because you didn't get your CRC training fee yet? No, that's a cost of doing business. So a lot of times you can get your cost reimbursed from different buckets. And at the end of the day, it kind of all pays for itself. If you're doing it right, it kind of all takes care of itself and allows for decent profit for the site owners. And you reach a point where training a CRC is not just makes them a viable CRC for one study, but for many studies. At which point now you can afford quality assurance person to come in, or maybe one of your other CRCs, or you hire a quality assurance person to do the QA, which is not a line item in any budget that I've seen, although I'm sure we can start asking for those. And as with all things in this industry, if you can justify it, you'll get it. But typically QA is part of the overall site business model. Like you're supposed to watch for your quality assurance as a site owner. So it gets complex, and this is why a lot of sites reach out for help, and we're here to help you. So DSCS is the site network. We're here to help. We are working on ways to streamline these things, and we're working on ways to democratize this for the sites, for the smaller sites, the bigger sites, and the bigger site networks. You kind of almost forced if you're a small site to join forces with a bigger site network, or at least a company like DSCS. Eventually, it's going to reach the masses with technology. We're not there yet, but we're working on it. But just my thoughts on contracts and budgets and why it's so complicated. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Let me know if you want to hear more on this topic. Bye bye.